Hello! Today we will talk about the method of washing out when curing salinized soil. Here's a photograph of a cross-section of salinized soil patch where we can clearly see the white streaks of deposited soil. And before we get into any details, let's just talk for a second what happens if a farmer makes some uninformed decisions about washing out irrigation. Here's the thing, if you're using too little water, you will probably achieve nothing. Sure, salts will probably drop to a certain level, but once you stop putting the water in, they will probably rise back to their original level. Not even probably, most certainly they will. And another extreme is using too much water, right? Some farmers might be unaware of saline groundwater present in their field. And if that's the case, and they're using too much irrigation or washout water in this case, then the saline horizon can actually merge with the irrigation water, which will ultimately create a bigger salinization problem, and here's why. According to all laws of osmosis, salts from the groundwater will rise to the surface level, to the soil level, and you will get a bigger problem that you had. So, how do we avoid all of those mistakes when trying to wash out our salinization problem? Step 1, study your soil cross-section. It is really important to understand what's going on down there under your soil surface. Is it sand, or clay, or sandy loam, or rocky material? Knowing the mechanics of your soil will help you determine how easily the water will pass through it, how penetratable your soil is. Also, is there groundwater down there? And if there is, what kind? Is it saline or fresh? And how deep is it? Answering all of these questions is crucial if you want to make the most out of your washout this season. Next step, calculate how much washout water you will need. Of course, one always wants to get to the ideal situation as close as possible, but you have to understand what is ideal for you. For example, if you have highly saline soil and you want to achieve the neutral mark in one season, it can be really difficult. However, if you're okay with slightly saline or moderately saline situation just for one season, it can be achievable and even acceptable if you're growing salt-tolerant crops that particular season. In fact, there is a formula for determining how much washout water you will need. The story goes, if you want to wash out approximately 80% of salts out of your soil, you will need to spend up to 100 cubic meters of irrigation water per hectare for each centimeter of desired washing out layer. And the washout of approximately 80% will usually lead to slightly saline or non-saline situations, but you can see such a result requires a lot of water. Going back to our example, here salt deposit at approximately 40 centimeters below the surface level, so we just put this number into the formula and get 4,000 cubic meters of irrigation water per hectare. Okay, let's look at the factors that can help you reduce the volume of water needed for washing out. First, low-intensity irrigation is your best friend. The lower the intensity of irrigation, the more economical the water uses. That's why the sprinkler and drip irrigation systems are much more efficient than, for example, furrow or flood irrigation. It is known that sprinkler irrigation systems use 3 times less water than flood irrigation, for example. In case you've been wondering, there is a method to determine what is low and what is high intensity irrigation in your particular case. For example, when you turn on your irrigation system and you get water puddles like these, it indicates a severe imbalance. Unless you're working with rice paddies, any accumulation of water on your soil surface is a bad sign. Second factor is choosing the right season. When preparing for washout, it is optimal to choose season when groundwater level is minimal for the reason we already discussed. so that groundwater would not merge with irrigation water, creating even a bigger salinization problem. It is also best to choose time of year when the soil is not over moistened, because too much moisture in soil will not let the washout water do its job. And lastly, it is undesirable to do the process of washout during the heat waves or summer, when the high temperatures will make large amounts of water evaporate to no avail. However, if you work with furrow or flood irrigation, then the period of heavy rains is actually great for you. Even in arid regions, there's always a time when there are heavy rains. And if you prepare for this time in advance, even seemingly small precipitation of 70 millimeters can be actually equivalent to 700 cubic meters of irrigation water, which is already something. And finally, don't forget that the more your soil permeability is, the less washout water you will need. So, if you consider all those factors that I just mentioned, there's a high chance that you'll need less washout water than you originally thought you'd need. Now, before washing your soil out, you will need to prepare the drainage system, carefully calculating its depth and location. We will talk about drainage systems in a lot of detail in a separate video, but today let's focus on the importance of drainage system in the process of washout. Naturally, the placement of your drainage system will depend on the topography of your field. And to understand the topography of your field better, it is probably best to contact the surveying service, where specialists will come to your field and measure everything with levels correctly. However, this option might not be available to many farmers. And as an alternative, you can use GoogleEarth to approximate the elevation lines yourself. And for those unfamiliar with the app, I will show how it's done. It's absolutely free and really easy. First, we find our field on GoogleEarth. Then select Add Polygon and roughly draw the boundaries of our field. Obviously on this picture the field was already mapped. Next, select Add Path, draw a cross line and save. In the tab for your path, select Show Elevation Profile. And now, by moving the cursor left and right, we see all the depressions and elevation on our field. We can mark them and add as many lines as we like, so that we could understand where it would be best to build our drains. In the case of this field, the best location for building the main drain would be this wasteland on the right, where elevation is much lower than the elevation of the entire field. However, if there is no wasteland in your case and you're surrounded by other fields, then you have to look for lower elevation on your field itself. For example, here we have 124 meters of elevation, so we could put the main drain here. Will we create a new salinity situation near the drains? Absolutely not. If we dig a drain to a depth of 2 meters, then the salt level will be 2 meters under the surface. This is deep enough and we will not interfere with the neighboring plants. Now let's talk about our additional drainage lines. Of course, we want to maintain some sort of a balance and not dig up the entire field with our additional drainage lines, because, well, it'll make our field really inconvenient to work on. On the other hand, in the case of soil with heavy mechanical composition such as loams and clay, it might not be sufficient to have your drainage lines with interval from 200 to 300 meters for washout. So what do we do? Where we find this balance? We can resort to a rather expensive option of buying specialized perforated drainage pipes. However, there is an alternative too. The old method of chisel plowing comes to our aid. Unlike regular plows, chisel plows do not turn the soil over, but instead they create relatively deep mini drains. Such mini drains range from 50 to 70 centimeters deep, are quite durable and can help the washout water flow more easily to the main drains. The consequences of washing the salts out of the soil are quite obvious. With all the harmful salts, we wash out all useful nutrients which obviously exist in the form of salts in soil. Therefore, when washout is complete, it is crucial to replenish all the nutrients that we just washed out with additional doses of fertilizers. And if you discover the salinization problem during the growing season, it is much better to just do an intensive irrigation instead of a complete washout, and here's why. If you do a complete washout when the plants are already growing in the soil, you will not be able to replenish the nutrients to the best extent. At this point, you probably figured that washing the salts out of your soil is quite an expensive and labor-intensive process. So, are there any alternatives to all the hassle? Let's talk about that in our next video.